Hey there everybody, Lady K here, and here is my first cosplay tutorial, walkthrough, FAQ, whatever you'd like to call it, and it's for my Taako hat. Recently I started working on Taako, which is a character from the podcast The Adventure Zone. He is a elf wizard, and naturally as being a wizard, you need a wizard hat. And here is the hat, as you guys can see. It's stuffed right here, and the point is bendable and posable, as well as the brim. And there is also a stopper in the top that allows for the stuffing to be there without having it get into your wig. So after posting some pictures of the hat done, I got a lot of questions on how I made the hat and any tips and if I would do a tutorial. And I'm going to be honest here with you guys that I actually followed a tutorial I found online. The link is right here. It's a very well done tutorial. I'm not going to sit here and read it verbatim and pretend like it's mine. Please go visit this wonderful site if you can, because it's a wonderful source. I'm also going to include it in the description of this video, as well as any other sites that I used as a resource. But I don't want to leave you guys empty-handed. Even though I didn't figure out how to make the hat on my own and I followed a tutorial, there are still many things about using a tutorial that you kind of have to bend in order to get it to fit the project that you want to complete. Because of this, I'm going to just kind of give you a breakdown of what I changed, what I used, you know, the time it took me to make the hat, and any other information that I think would be very important for you guys to figure out. And hopefully it'll help you out. If it doesn't, you know, Google is your best friend, especially as a cosplayer, so don't be afraid to Google anything. And I'd also like to put a disclaimer to say that even though this worked for me, it will not work for everybody. You know, there are always things that may work for me or somebody else, but may not work for other people. So I guess I can start off by telling you what I used. The tutorial lists some things that are a little bit different, but I'm going to tell you what I used in order to make my Taako hat. What I used was about 1 yard to 2 yards of fabric. I used a semi-stretch jean-esque fabric. I used it for my patches for Femme Jughead and for the Piranha Stan Pines patches that I made for my partner when he did Evil Stan. It has a little bit of stretch to it, and it also has a little bit of toughness to it, so that I know that it's gonna, you know, withstand the elements of a convention or, you know, weather and travel or whatever may come its way. What I also used was polyfill stuffing, simple stuff that you can get at like Joann's or Michael's or whatever fabric or craft store brand chains that you have near you. I used hot glue and a lot of hot glue sticks. I use a needle and thread and my sewing machine. If you have access to either of these, good for you. If you have access to both of these, that's even more fantastic. I used a pen and some paper just for measurements. I didn't make a pattern for this hat, but if you'd like to make a pattern, my suggestion would be to use tracing paper or drafting paper. You can get a roll of drafting paper at Staples, I think for about 15 bucks. Not cheap, but you know, it'll get you through a lot of patterns, and it's good to have in case you want to make your own patterns later. I also use something that I'd like to call flower stem wire. It's thin wire that people put into the stems of fake flowers to give them the ability to be bent and posed. I use this for my Gajinka Umbreon ears to have them stand up straight, and I had some extras left over, so I decided to use it in the hat. Where I used it in the hat is I used it in the point along this back hem right here. You can't really see because the lighting in here is terrible. So there is 2 bits of wire right here that allow me to bend it. I also used it around the edge of the brim, which gave me the ability to bend it and pose it how I want it. Notice how it's staying that way. And I also used it in the main body of the brim. Basically right in the main brim of the hat, in kind of like an asterisk or a star pattern, there is wiring, and that's to make sure that the brim of the hat doesn't get super floppy when it's on me, because even though it's super floppy now, when it's on me it actually is able to hold its shape pretty well. So depending on how bendy or how stiff you would like the brim of your hat to be, I would say get between 2 to 3 packs of this flower stem wire. If you go to a craft store and just go to the fake flower department, I'm pretty sure the people will be able to help you out in finding it. And as you can tell from the edge of my hat, I used quilting bond tape or hem tape, whatever it's called. It's called different things to different people. I call it hem tape, and you can get it at any fabric store. Just go to the quilting section or ask somebody to take you to the hemming tape. And it's basically just fabric that is folded over, and it comes in different thicknesses and different colors, so you can kind of go crazy with the customization. I used it on the brim of my hat because there was a lot of hot glue carnage and a lot of hemming carnage, so I really wanted to create a clean line. Now that I've kind of told you what I used, I'll give you just a brief breakdown of how long it took me to make it, and you know what I did that branched off from the tutorial that I followed. So not taking into consideration breaks for dinner and, you know, my partner coming over and talking about Taz with me and, you know, anything else, the whole project took me about 5.5 to 6 hours to make. I know it's a very long time, but there's a lot of hot glue, there's a lot of measuring and a lot of sewing, so it took me a while to make. Plus, this was my first time making something like this. I wanted to make sure I got everything right. How I differed from the tutorial, or how I made the tutorial work for the project that I was making, is that I followed it up until, you know, it was time for me to cut out and sew the cone and the brim together. What I did differently is that I cut out 2 brim circles instead of just one, and this is because I wanted there to be a main brim, you know, that is the top part, and then I wanted there to also be brim on the bottom, and I wanted there to be 2 circles because I knew I was going to be inserting wires to make it bendable and to have it hold its shape. And with just 1 circle, I would have to worry about, you know, people seeing the wire when you know, take off the hat or in photos. Another thing that I differed from with the tutorial is that I stuffed the top. I know that doesn't seem like a big of a deal, but it actually does have a little bit of difference in how you're going to actually make the hat, because I wanted to make sure that it would look good, and I wanted to make sure that the stuffing and the wire that I ended up putting into the top of the hat would be able to work well. So there's that. To make the stopper for all of the stuffing, all I did was take the little circle that I cut out that was, you know, supposed to be the inner circle of the brim, and I just kind of hot glued it in there. Another thing that I did differently was that I actually put wire in the point of the hat, and this had some effect with how tall I wanted it to be. The wire that I used was about 18 inches long, so I really didn't want to risk having too much of a gap at the top for where you could tell where the wire was and where it wasn't. So I actually made the point about 19 inches tall, and that was to take into consideration seam allowances, but it actually worked out in my favor that the seam allowance didn't need a lot of room. So there's still about a 1/2 inch between the end of the wire and the point, but it's not too much where it's going to make any difference in photos or anything. Another way that I differed from the tutorial is actually a very minor way. Instead of doing my head circumference just naturally, I actually did my head circumference with the wig on. And this is because with a wig on, your head circumference actually is different, as I have found, because I did my natural head circumference and then I did my head circumference in a wig because my partner suggests that I do that because wigs tend to make your head bigger for some reason. And he was right, because my head circumference measurement was different when I had the wig on. So my suggestion would be to definitely do that measurement with your wig on if you have the wig. If you don't have the wig, I would suggest maybe adding 2 to 3.5 inches to your natural head measurement, and that'll give you some wiggle room when creating the brim in order to, you know, have room for the wig. So now that I've kind of told you how I differed from the tutorial and how I made it my own, I'll basically break down how I use the wire in the hat, because unless you've worked with this stuff before, it is really discouraging and you'll probably end up burning your hands a couple of times, just a warning. So I'll break down how I used it for the hat. So what I did first is that I put the wire in the cone of the hat. And this was before I had attached it to the brim. That's important because if you do it after you've kind of attached it to the brim and everything, you're kind of sitting there, you're like, oh crap, and you end up burning your hands because you're trying to get all the way up to the top, and it's just a mess. So my suggestion is, after you've sewn the cone together and kind of turned it inside out, my suggestion is along the main hem or the main seam in the point, take your wire and kind of put it right next to it, just right against that seam, and then glue it and then fold over the seam. And this will prevent the wire from being seen in pictures. It will also make it a little bit more comfortable because the wire is not poking you in the head. Be sure to leave room at the bottom of the cone so that you can attach the brim of the hat, because if you don't, then you have to deal with cutting the wire and all of that stuff. Also, it does help to have wire cutting pliers because this wire will destroy your scissors. So after I attached the cone to the brim, I then added the wire around the outside of the brim. Now what I did is that I put it in a location that I could easily fold over the fabric. This is where that 1/2 inch on the outside really does come in handy, because it allows the wire to stay in place. You're not gonna find wire that is this long, and if you do, please tell me where you got it from in the comments. So what I did is that I did one, and then when it ran out, I just put in another one. So this is multiple actually pieces of wire in the entire brim of the hat. Now, while making it, I realized that that little separation area was actually causing it to bend. So after putting all of them in, I actually went back and took little kind of like maybe 2-inch pieces of wire, and I just glued it right at that point where the two wires met, and that gave it enough stability that when I put it on, it actually didn't, you know, like wobble to and fro. It was just straight. And since it was still that bending wire, it allowed me to still pose the hat the way I wanted it to be. Now the wire in the main brim of the hat is 2 pieces of the wire set next to each other, and I kind of did it in like an asterisk form around it. I kind of used the lines that I did for measuring the circle. So, you know, there's one that goes straight, there are ones that goes across, and then I just kind of divided it in half, kind of like a pizza. And I started it here right at this seam, and then I ended it here right where the other wire ended. And I layered 2, I put 2 in instead of just 1, because I wanted the wire to actually be some support in the hat instead of just making it, you know, pliable and, you know, posable. You're going to use a lot of hot glue when putting in the wire, so I would suggest stocking up on hot glue sticks. You are probably also going to run into situations where you might burn yourself, and I'm just warning you of that right now, just because a lot of people think that they can get away with that. You know, there is definitely a dangerous element. If you have the ability to have somebody else help you with this, please do that, because I did it by myself and I burned my hands a couple of times. So that's my warning from me to you about this project and using the wires. So that's about it for my walkthrough tutorial FAQ on how I made my taco hat. Again, I really followed the tutorial. Like, there were a few measurement extras that I had to do, such as changing the head circumference to take into mind wearing a wig. The wire element is definitely something that is different, and the stuffing area is definitely something that is different that made this hat unique. And that's really truly about it. If you have any other questions, like how I styled my wig for Taako, or how I'm making anything jewelry wise, I've been making a lot of jewelry for Taako, please let me know down in the comment section below. I really do hope this helped. Again, I'm not going to just read a tutorial that I found online. Like, that's not my style, that's not my steez. This person put a lot of work into their tutorial, so please go visit it and follow it. Anything that I say, I hope I helped with. And yeah, that's about it for me rambling about a hat for a wizard. Hopefully everything works out great, and my cat came to say hello. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please, please, please check out any of the resources I have below. They really did help me, and I really do hope they help you. If you want to maybe request anything else that you want me to do, like a walkthrough of how I made other things, please let me know in the comment section below, or DM me on Instagram. I'd love to do more of these. I love talking about cosplay, and as a self-taught cosplayer, I love helping people learn new ways to do this beautiful art form. And if you like this video and you want to see more of it, subscribe to my channel, donate to my coffee. All of that is in the end slide at the end of this video. So thank you guys so much again for listening to me ramble, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day, night, wherever you are. Bye!